speak now to Marc Fels, who's the director of the HGV Recruitment Centre. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, Marc.
Good afternoon.
Now, first of all, the government says 5,000 temporary visas are going to be issued for now. Labour says that many more are needed. What do you think?
Well, I would have to agree. If we look at the numbers and the shortages are in excess, I would say now, of 100,000. Whilst every single driver coming into our market is a good thing, I think the Chamber of Commerce summed it up quite nicely as well. They said it's a thimble of water to try and put out a fire, and I think that's quite astute.
So what do you think should have done to prevent us from being in this situation?
Well, I was discussing this morning on your breakfast show. The early writings on the wall for this were as early as last August, when we started to see a lack of, and we could see that very few new drivers were going to come through, and we had challenges ahead with IR35. But things started to get quite serious from April. So I work with other large recruiters and some very large transport and haulier companies, and things started to go wrong, for want of a better term, then, and they've stayed pretty consistent since then. So I'm quite surprised that this announcement is only really coming to our attention now, when actually this has been quite a big problem for nearly 6 months.
Now, I accept you probably think this is too little too late, this government action, but how far do you feel it mitigates the problem?
Well, when we consider that there's a 100,000 plus shortage, and we're bringing in 5% of that number to try and help, it really doesn't mitigate it very far, unfortunately.
And do you feel that we will, be successful in finding these 5,000 drivers? Because, part of the issue is that not enough people are drawn to the job. So how easy will it be to fill these places?
Well, I think we probably can find people, but we also have to understand that it's not going to happen tomorrow morning. From the minute we engage with someone, for that person to then come over and then start work, we could be looking at 10 days, 2 weeks from today, and that's already 1/6 of the time that these short-term visas have been released for. So, I think we can probably find the people, but I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow, and suddenly we're only looking at 10 weeks of them being able to be here before they have to go home again, unless, of course, the government at that point U-turn and either let those 5,000 stay, or, dare I say, at that point realise that that's not solving anything, and we need to let some more in.
So what do you think the situation is likely to be in the coming weeks' time? I just want to get your sense of where we're likely to be as a result of perhaps the lateness of action on this.
Well, sadly, I can't see very much changing, because, as discussed, these 5,000 are only being earmarked for fuel and for food, and as you said a minute ago, we're already demanding, or the supermarket world is already demanding 15,000 drivers just for themselves. So these 5,000 will come in, they'll be distributed between sort of ADR, which is fuel driving, and food driving. But what does that do to the rest of the market? I've got umpteen customers, clients in construction that are screaming out for drivers, because construction's also busy. So it's a small win, but it doesn't really help in the long term. And unfortunately, when these short-term visas run out, we're still going to be faced with the same issues we were moving into next year and the year after. Something has to change longer term, because we have an ageing population. We do have young people who want to join the industry, but the barrier to entry is cost. It's several £1,000s to join the licence. And as I've said now a couple of times, HGV driving, whilst it is skilled work, is not considered a vocation. If it were, it would access student funding, and we as a country are already funding students to the tune of £17 billion a year, which is a combined debt at the moment of £101 billion, rising to £500 billion by the middle of this century. So, when we consider the costs to actually say, right, we're gonna help young people, we're gonna fund them, we could train 30,000 drivers for the cost of £100 million. Now, I know that's still a lot of money, but that's less than 0.5% of the money we lend to students in just 1 year. So I feel it's unfair, and I would definitely welcome the opportunity to speak to Mr. Zahari and Mr. Shapps to say, look, education and transport have to work together.
Well, Marc, I just want to cut in there, actually, if I may. I want to put to you what Grant Shapps said earlier today. The Transport Secretary saying that this is a long-standing issue, and actually the industry itself needs to take some responsibility to tackling the issue and not just wait for government to do things.
Some, yes, but it's not industry. What, you know, logistics haulier businesses are run on relatively tight margins, and they can't afford, especially with inflating wages, to suddenly start funding £4,000 or £5,000 courses. Now, the government could offer the younger community, and I get called every day from people wanting to join, funding and loans, and I know very quickly we could start to bring more people in. You know, there are elements of this job that are very, very hard and very, very strenuous. And we have a situation where there's an enormous shortage. I see personally lots and lots of people who want to join, but they can't afford it. So there has to be a conversation, because otherwise, yes, we'll put plasters over the wound now. We've written to lorry drivers begging them to come back. We've increased wages. We're bringing in some foreign drivers, but these are just temporary measures. You know, if we don't start a different conversation about how we're going to bring new blood into this industry, we're going to be talking about the same issue next year, the year after, and the year after that, sadly.
Marc, Fels, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.